Welcome, everybody, to our Bulletproof Your Immune System workshop. And we're going to jump right in with a question and a story, really, about a question. So Dr. Albert Einstein, everybody knows who he was, right? One day he was working with his students and he was giving them a test. And one of the students looked at the test and raised their hand and said, "Dr. Einstein, these questions look the same as the ones we had last year on this test." And Dr. Einstein said, "Well, the questions may be the same, but the answers are going to be different." And he said that because he knew that they were 1 year later in their knowledge and their understanding of things. But I bring this story up because everybody's asking and has been asking the same questions for 100 years or more on how do I stay healthy? How do I get a healthy immune system? And the answers that we traditionally hear are just the same over and over again. Well, actually, the answers should be changing because there's a lot more that we understand. And that's what I want to cover with you tonight, is what are the real answers to the questions of how do I really bulletproof my immune system? Now, before the last few years, we used to call this particular workshop how to boost your immune system in 21 days. And that was because people really, if they did what we recommended, within 21 days, they already saw that their immune system was getting stronger and healthier and more robust. And I like the title Bulletproof Your Immune System because it kind of says you're not going to be avoiding the bullets. They're going to come. Your immune system is going to be challenged, but we want it to have a robust response so it can readily and appropriately respond to any immune system challenges that come up. That's really what we want. So when we talk about bulletproofing the immune system, we are very careful about the words that we use, and that's actually what we mean by that. So I want to just thank all of you for showing up, and those of you that are here, it tells me that you are action takers, that you are learners, that you really want to understand and make changes, and so I want to celebrate you for that. Now, some of you already know my story, and I'm going to share that in a minute, but I just love this. I'm going to open up my PowerPoint now and share that, and I just want to just share the images because really the images, pictures tell so many words, right? So let me just scoot this out of the way and bring up our slideshow. From the beginning, here we go. Bulletproofing your immune system. I love this image, and I love it because it really is the sign of, really coming out of like death and being reborn. And for some people, they just feel like their immune system has been so tanked. And I just want them to know that really, just like a phoenix coming out of the ashes, it really is possible for your immune system to be robust and strong because that's how it was designed to be. And so if you're not experiencing that, we know only one thing is happening. Something is interfering with that natural state of a strong immune system. And there's only two things that can interfere with it: toxicities or deficiencies or both. So we're going to be covering all of that here in this presentation tonight, what the best practices are, what I see right here in my clinic, the approaches that I use right here in the clinic where we get our best results. And so I love this image of the phoenix. I hope that it can inspire you to be ready to do what it takes in order to really get your immune system bulletproof. Now, some of you, as I said, know my story, and my story with chiropractic actually started with my immune system. When I was 13 years old, so about 3 years before this image, when I was 13 years old, I had strep throat, and my dad had gone off to chiropractic school, and he was going through his training with chiropractic, and he came back on vacation to me having strep throat. And so my mom told him about it, and he said, "Well, we let's just check you." And so he checks me, and then he gives me my first chiropractic adjustment. And within minutes, half an hour maybe, I noticed that I started to feel better right away. Now, in our family, we were pretty much conventional. So we would have gone to the pediatrician, gotten the penicillin. If I had taken it, if I got better, I would have thought, oh, the medicine made me better. But because I had chiropractic care and I got better from that, what I realized is I asked my dad, like, how does this work? He gave me this crazy adjustment in my neck. Like, how does this work? And he said, we just had to turn the power on. And so I realized at 13 years old that the healing was coming from in me. And that's really what I want you to get, because so many of the questions about the immune system are all about how do I do things from the outside to make my immune system strong? And what I want you to learn tonight is what are the things you need to do to just get that already designed immune system to be robust. So really, the whole conversation that we've had in the last, 3 or 4 years, I mean, COVID came upon the scene. It totally stressed our system. We have learned a lot from it. And what I've been watching is, everybody cares about the immune system 10 times more than ever before, right? But when I hear the cultural conversation about the immune system, it's always about, oh no, and being afraid of this next badass virus that's going to come to town. Well, I just want you to understand, just as far as the immune system goes, and as far as viruses go, we right now have in our bodies 10 to the 15th viruses, 10 to the 15th viruses, not that's, a few and you add them all together and the total population is that. No, 10 to the 15th variety of viruses that are all part of our microbiome. We have something called the virome that is actually part of our makeup. And we're spending so much attention and energy and resources on focusing on one virus, one. And we're terrified of that virus. Like, that's what the cultural conversation is. And so for the last few years, I just keep repeatedly asking the question, everyone is focused on the strength of the virus, but no one is focusing on the strength of the host. And that's really where we need to put our attention, especially for this conversation this evening. If you really want to bulletproof your immune system, you have to stop thinking about the fear of the strength of the virus, because you have no control over that. And we can guarantee that there is going to be another badass virus that comes to town. But at the same time, we're constantly exposed to lots of viruses all the time. And our immune system is there to help us to co-create our environment together with those viruses, to live together in harmony and in a synergistic way. And so actually, the presence of those viruses are essential for us to even exist. So again, let's just start focusing on the strength of the host. And let's also look at the fact that when we stressed our system, right? COVID shows up, we stress our system, and it showed us that we were actually pretty weak because of our system being stressed. Now, if we go back 40,000 years and we look at humanity, the human species on the planet, we were the super species on the planet. We used to be that super species that could go anywhere on the planet, no matter the climate, no matter the environment, and we just figured it out, and we not just survived, but we thrived all over the planet. There was no other species that was able to do that. We were able to do that. But now you fast forward to modern times, and we still are acting as though we're Superman, but instead of being the super species on the planet, we are now the sickest species on the planet. And so there's a problem here, because there's a disconnect where we're acting as though we are the super species, but we're actually weakened. We're in a weakened state. So I just want to say that we actually are born equipped as superheroes. We're born as superheroes with these amazing superpowers, which includes our immune system, but we have become weak in the process. And so the problem is not that we have a badass virus in town. It's that we are no longer the badasses that we were designed to be. That's actually what the problem is. So we need to actually change this conversation and really look at what's the formula here that we need to recognize. So we were born superheroes, but we have become weak. And if we look at the formula, it's always going to be based on 3 things. Our genetics, right? And remember, what our genetics is it's that 40,000 years, many hundreds of generations behind us of successful human beings, right? We wouldn't be here with the genetics that we have unless they were passing on successful genetic strategies. So what we have was actually created 40,000 years ago, and it actually has changed very little in 40,000 years. It takes a long time for the genome to change. And so here we are with it customized for an environment that we lived in 40,000 years ago. So the health equation definitely includes what we've inherited, but from all the study I've done of advanced genetic understanding, every time it always comes back to 99.6% of us have the perfect genome to express perfect health as long as we have the right environment over time. And so there are three factors here. The genetics is one of them. The environment is another one. And so the environment actually, together with the genetics, creates something called ecogenetics, which means the environment will influence how our genetics expresses itself, how our genes express. And so the environment is something we don't necessarily have control over. I mean, you know, last year at this time, if you lived in Pennsylvania, right? It was not a good place to be, with a train wreck where you can't even hold your breath when you go outside, right? Exposed to the environment, right? If you live in LA, you can't hold your breath when you go outside there for many, many years, right? So the environment is something that we don't necessarily have complete control over, but our lifestyle, we have 100% control over. It's all about the choices that we're making all day long. And they also will create an environment that will then influence how our genes are being expressed. So this is the brutal facts, that the thing that's going to determine your health experience and your immune system strength is all three of these. And, you know, we have colleagues that are just brilliant. And one of my colleagues, Dr. James Chestnut, he said, you know, when people think about their health and if they're suffering with their health, they think it's either from bad genetics, bad genes, or bad germs, or bad luck. That's what people tend to think about. Like if they can't figure it out with the genes or the germs, then it just must be bad luck. But actually, it always comes back to bad behavior. It's bad behavior that's the problem. It's the things that they're doing all day long that are actually creating the problem. And if you think about it, the genes have created a blueprint for us. And, you know, with any blueprint, you don't have a house just because you have a blueprint of a house. The house still needs building blocks in order to make it. And so those building blocks are going to come from the lifestyle choices that we're making. And so that's why it's so important that we pay close attention to all the lifestyle choices. And we're going to cover that today. And people still come up to me and they still say, but doc, you don't understand, you know, diabetes runs in our family. I always come back to, hang on, the problem is not that diabetes runs in your family. The problem is that nobody is running in your family. You're all doing the same lifestyle and you're all recreating the same problems because of you have the blueprint, the potential of the blueprint, but the ingredients, the building blocks, you're not supplying the right building blocks. And so our culture actually pushes us against a healthy lifestyle. The environment that we've created is so sideways compared to 40,000 years ago, what we should have been living as, that it has created problems. And here are some of the evidence of those problems. Look at the obesity trend. And this is global among girls and boys. You can see how it just is skyrocketing. I'm just going to move this right up into the corner here. All right. And so you can see it just skyrockets here over time. From 1980, it just started to go right up. And the US is leading the way with this. And if we look at another great article here, it just shows that obesity actually was linked to severe coronavirus disease, especially with younger patients. So younger folks basically had very little risk of having a bad experience with COVID, except for the ones that were obese. They were the ones that were more vulnerable. And so it became one of the most significant risk factors for being hospitalized with COVID was obesity. There was a study in China that actually showed that in a group of 112 COVID-19 patients, that's 17 who died, they were either overweight or obese. So of the 17, 15 were either overweight or obese. So that was 88% of the ones that had a bad outcome. They were the ones that were obese. And there was actually another study where they found that even in 2009 with the H1N1, the swine flu influenza, that the people that were obese were more vulnerable to the infectious diseases. And they also found that obese folks, when they're trying to get a vaccine, even a flu vaccine, that they actually don't seem to get the benefit if you're obese. The body just doesn't seem to get the same kind of benefit from it. So that's really important to, if you think you're going to rely on the vaccine as a resource for immune system function, you just can't. And so there, you have to take another approach. And so again, if you look at the top countries that have the most obesity, if you look at this list, like we're number 12 on this list, but look at what those other countries are. They're tiny little, you know, Pacific islands, right? Tiny little Pacific islands and Kuwait, right? And then there's the United States. So we're the most developed country on this list, and we're number 12 in the entire world. So obesity, again, was the single biggest chronic factor in the hospitalizations in New York City as well. So it's time that we have a real national discussion about the overall health of Americans. And, you know, we really, if you look at the trends, diabetes, same thing. The percentage with diabetes and the number with diabetes, it was the same kind of thing, that we were just seeing this trend happening of it just going up along with the obesity. The most disturbing document that I have seen really in my career was in 2009. This study came out that said that for the first time in the history of man, children born after the year 2000 are not expected to live as long as their parents. Now, sometimes I know our eyes can just glaze over when we start to talk about the statistics and so on. But when I saw this one, it just stopped me, because this, I hope this is not okay with any of you, because it is not okay with me. And if we think of it as just data, that's one thing. But if you think of it as, wait a minute, children born after the year 2000, wait, that's my child. My child was born after the year 2000. Maybe you have grandchildren, or you have nieces or nephews, or, right? Is it okay with you if they don't live as long as you? Is that okay with you? I hope not. And so remember that the linchpin of this is our lifestyle. And when we look at how much money we're spending, 86% of the trillions of dollars we spend on healthcare go to lifestyle diseases, chronic diseases. Things like obesity and smoking certainly are a factor, but there's even more to it than that. So when we look at the prevalence of chronic disease in the US, you can just see how it is just going up and up and up, and you can see what it's expected in 2030 if we don't change what we're doing. And we're not changing what we're doing. We can see clearly in the US that we're headed in the wrong direction. So we were born superheroes, but we become weak. And the problem is not that we have this badass virus again, it's that we are not as badass as we are designed to be. So really, let's just look at this. What superpowers were we actually born with? Here are some of the ones that I love the most. Okay, first one we're going to talk about is breast milk. Breast milk is a superpower. It's something that the mother's body creates, and it is the perfect thing for that child. And it is so perfect that as that child is nursing from its mom, it is communicating with the mother's body. And it is communicating so precisely that it actually will program the mother's milk so that it will deliver the exact nutrients in the exact concentrations that that baby needs that day. And so here is an example of, this was a study that was done, I think it was about 5 years ago, but what they did is they looked at the breast milk of a woman who was breastfeeding, and then the next day she was saving her breast milk. She was, storing it in the freezer just for the future. The next day her baby had a fever, and so she would nurse that baby again, and all night was nursing, and that baby had a fever. And the next day when she pumped the milk, look at the difference. That's 1 day's difference. And so that second day, that milk was filled with everything that that sick baby needed that was different than what it needed the day before. It was the perfect doctor for that baby, providing it with exactly what that feverish baby needed the very next day, right? So that is a superpower. What are the other superpowers? Our gut wall is a superpower. Our gut wall is a superpower because all the food that we put into our body, we have to first digest it. But once we break it down into these building blocks, our gut wall very selectively is going to let through the building blocks that are going to be useful for us, and it's going to filter out the ones that we don't need or that we shouldn't use, that we shouldn't let in. Our gut wall is so amazing. And in fact, when a baby is born, because it's going to be taking the breast milk in, the gut wall is leaky. It lets so much in because it's expecting to get just breast milk. It's not expecting to get baby formula. It's not expecting to get baby food. It's expecting to get breast milk. And so there are things in the breast milk that we really want to get completely into the baby's body. So the gut wall is leaky in the beginning on purpose. And then as the microbiome builds and grows and develops in that baby, and as they mature, those tight junctions start to establish themselves so that they become a really effective filter to keep out the things that don't belong in our body. Really, our gut is like it's like we're a donut, right? So when we put something into our mouth and we swallow it, it goes through our digestive system, it's not actually in our bodies yet. It's only in our bodies once we absorb it through the gut lining, through the gut wall, and then it gets into the bloodstream, and then it's available in our body to use as building blocks or to use as things that are going to influence our responses to our environment. So the gut wall tight junctions are amazing. And in fact, it's when the child's teeth break through, that's when it's ready to eat on its own and start to put other things in. But before that, it's not ready to break down those proteins. And so it still is leaky. So isn't that an amazing design that we have, right? It's a superpower. Another superpower, T killer cells. So T killer cells are specifically there to find and kill cancer cells. That's a superpower that we have. Fever is another superpower. It actually heats up the body to kill off the pathogen so that we survive. The other role of the fever, I was just talking to a mom this evening. Her daughter had a 104-degree fever. She's staying well hydrated. So although that's pretty high, it's not a concern. It's actually her body doing exactly what it needs to do. And in fact, children are required to have a 103-degree fever or higher before the age of 3 in order to establish coordination between the nervous system and the immune system. There's a phrase that informed pediatricians use, which is 103 by 3. So they need to have that experience, that fever, so that they can coordinate and have an efficiently functioning neuroimmune system for the rest of their life. So window of development there. So, and the other thing that happens with a fever is it increases the frequency of oscillation of the cells. And as you increase that frequency of oscillation, the bone cells can very easily liberate calcium. And so when our immune system is working hard for certain things, it needs more calcium. And so the fever is the way to liberate that calcium so it's available. So oftentimes, if you have those high fevers, if you provide enough of the easily digestible calcium, then that fever quiets down because the body's getting what it needs. Okay, here's another superpower. Ready? Vomiting. Vomiting is a superpower. Oh my gosh. Our body identifies the toxin and then gets rid of it immediately. As soon as it came in, back out it goes, right? Well, really, if your body didn't do that, that toxin is just going to go deeper and deeper into your system. It's going to be harder and harder and more of a burden to the body the deeper it goes. The second thing that the body will do if it doesn't get it out from vomiting is it just loosens everything up and pushes it out as fast as it can the other side. So, of course, these things are not comfortable, they're not convenient, but they are superpowers, and they are the way our body was designed so that it can actually be healthy. So these are all examples of your robust immune system and how it works. And yet, what are the implications of us getting weak? You know, we got weak, our immune systems got weak because of the lifestyles that we were living. And then when this badass virus comes to town, you know, it wasn't like, oh, it just affected a few people. No, because there were weak people in our community, in order to try and protect the small segment of the population that was weaker, the whole world got shut down. That was our approach. Just shut down the whole world, right? Instead of, let's just get everybody stronger. The ones that are already strong are already strong. They can actually help the rest of them that are weaker to get stronger. And yet we shut the whole world down. Our approach was stay at home, wash your hands, no hugging or high fives, hope and pray for a vaccine. That was the best we came up with, right? The world shut down, not just a town or a state, the world shut down. And it shut down again because there was a segment of our population that was vulnerable. But the thing is that really should have been completely preventable. That population that was vulnerable, it was lifestyle illness, it was lifestyle choices that created that vulnerability. So it's time to change the conversation. Stop focusing on the strength of the virus and start focusing on the strength of the host. And it's time to focus so that you get stronger, so that you won't be weak. And let's just bring into the conversation anybody you know that is struggling, that is concerned. Let's also help them to get stronger as well. So how did we get so weak? There are some reasons. First off is we have to look at it. Personal responsibility. Who is in charge of you? Who is responsible for your health? Is your MD, your medical doctor, are they responsible? How about your spouse? How about your parent, right? How about your accountant? Are they telling you what you can afford and can't afford? Is that who's responsible for your health? Your insurance carrier? I hope not, because that is not what their bottom line is about, right? The government, are they responsible for your health? The WHO, right? I say, who is responsible? It's not the WHO, right? We can see actually how the World Health Organization handled everything in the last 3 years. They were not concerned about your health. The sooner that we recognize that we are responsible, the better it is. Now, there's a third reason I'm going to tell you later, but the second reason is we've lowered our expectations of health. And what do I mean by that? We've normalized weak immune systems and chronic disease, right? We're just calling sick and healthy. We're just starting to say it's normal to be sick. Look around you, everybody's sick. That's just normal to be sick. It's normal to have chronic illness. It's normal for your blood pressure to be high, your blood sugar to be high. Just get on these drugs. That's just normal, right? And we actually have even changed our definition of health. So people actually think that the difference between, sick and healthy is how they feel, right? They talk about it almost like it's a toggle switch. Oh, I was sick on Monday and Tuesday, and then I got healthy again on Wednesday and Thursday. It's based on how they feel. But most people don't realize that there's actually a third level here, and that is the not sick zone. And it's in between sickness and healthy. You see, true robust health is different from just not having symptoms. So a lot of people are actually living in the not sick zone, which is also the not healthy zone. They're living in the not sick zone, but they're calling it healthy. That's what I mean by we have changed the definition of health. The real definition of health is, optimal cell function. But the definition that's being used is how you feel. I feel okay. I feel like I don't have any symptoms. I must be healthy. Well, all those folks with the obesity, with the comorbidities that were tanking, they actually were immunocompromised, but they didn't necessarily feel sick. And so it took them by surprise because they have been led to believe that just get on these medications to manage these chronic diseases that you're on. But actually, if they had changed their lifestyle to get healthier and not relied on the medications, then they would have been more robust. They would have been more truly healthy. So unfortunately, people are spending their lives toggling back and forth between sick and non-sick. And so we need a better definition than just sick and non-sick. So let's just look at this idea here, a better description of how health works. So we're all on this illness wellness continuum. Everybody's on it somewhere. Look at it. Where are you now? Mentally, just place a mark on where you are now. And this is the spectrum. So there's this dynamic, and it's fluid, and it's always changing. It's never static. Everybody's either moving towards health or away from it, moving in one direction or the other. and which way you're moving right now. Like, ask yourself, am I moving in the right direction right now? And again, it's going to be based on your lifestyle choices. And how about your kids and your family? Like, how healthy are you? You're only as healthy as your family is healthy. What would your spouse say about how healthy you are? What about your kids? What would they say about how healthy you are? And how healthy would you say they are? And which way do you wish that they were moving, right? That's the questions we need to be asking, right? And what would your family and your kids tell you about what they're observing? So let's just really talk about the difference between what we mean by immunocompromised. There's a difference between something being contagious and something being dangerous, right? So COVID has been contagious to everybody, but only dangerous to certain people. And it's dangerous to the immunocompromised. And so really, the question you should be asking yourself is, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm not immunocompromised? What do I need to do to be sure that I am immune competent? How do you become immune competent instead of immunocompromised? Well, we're going to go through a whole list of things of what you need to start doing, what you need to stop doing in order to reduce your risk of being immunocompromised and increase your chances of being immunocompetent. Again, shifting the focus from the strength of the virus to the strength of the host. So what do I mean by that? Who actually is immunocompromised? It's going to be folks like this. So yes, there are some genetic disorders, very, very tiny amount of the population, maybe 0.6% of the population that has some genetic disorder that actually might affect and create immunocompromise. So something like cystic fibrosis, right? Where your lungs are just all fibrotic, right? So if you get an upper respiratory virus, right, you might be in trouble. Well, I want to tell you, I actually know people that have cystic fibrosis that got COVID and came through it. I'm just saying. So it's not a death sentence, just means you have to be doing even more specific things. Okay, so genes are, there's one example of that. What else? Pre-existing conditions, right? But that means the things that you're already compromised, your system's already compromised. So yes, we need to take special care of those folks. And there actually are things that can be done to even make their systems more robust. People that are undergoing certain treatments like chemotherapy, right? That actually can create immunocompromise. For sure. Certain arthritic drugs also can create immunocompromise. And now I have the elderly listed there. Now, I have a question mark after that because it's not just simply age that is the problem. What is the problem is that the elderly are the ones that they're at risk because they've spent the last 30 or 40 years living in a genetically incongruent lifestyle. And they're with a compounding effect. So they've been compounding sickness over time. So I just want you to kind of grasp these ideas here, because really, essentially, you don't get sick, you do sick. You don't get sick, you do sick. It's not about trying to avoid a germ, right? It's really about how do I live in a robust way? Then you're doing healthy. So you don't get sick, you do sick, you don't get healthy, you do healthy. It's what you're doing, right? It doesn't just happen to you. Now you can see a couple of acorns here. You can see a couple of acorns. So acorns, right? What do acorns become? They become oak trees, right? An acorn becomes an oak tree. So if I took one of those acorns and I tossed it into the corner over here, is it still going to become an oak tree? Well, it's certainly not going to become an elm tree or a maple tree. If it's going to become a tree at all, it's going to become an oak tree. But it has to have the right environment in order to actually become the potential that it has. So that acorn needs to land in fertile soil for it to grow into the oak tree that it has the potential to grow into. So I use this example because viruses are actually just particles. They're not even a living thing. They are a sequence of proteins, and they need to have the right environment to then express into any kind of illness that they are linked to. So the key here is you can't avoid the viruses, but what you want to be spending your energy into is, what do you need to do to not become the soil for them so that they can express their potential, right? And so if we look at this illness wellness continuum, the more that you are spending time in the healthy zone, the stronger you're going to get. The more time you spend going down the tubes towards the less function, the weaker you're going to be. So everything is compounded. So certainly everybody knows to eat healthy, to exercise is healthy, to manage stress is healthy. And when you do those things one at a time, you can add them together, and it's going to start to move you and face you in the right direction. So you're going to be heading in the right direction. But the momentum of how fast you're moving in that direction is going to be from how it's compounded over time. So if you do it for a couple of days and then you go back to the bad habits, boom, you've just now started to move in the wrong direction. But when you are consistent with the healthy habits, you're not just adding the benefits, you're multiplying the benefits. So adding together eating healthy plus exercising plus dealing with stress effectively, it's one thing. But when you do it over time, it's eating healthy times exercising times dealing with stress effectively. It's compounding it. So just like interest in a bank account, if you keep putting money in there, you're going to get the benefit of more and more interest that compounds over time. That's going to be awesome. But if you have a credit card with debt and over time you don't take care of that, that's going to compound over time, and you're going to get you're going to be exposed to the detriment of that interest, of that compounding over time. So we just need to be doing the right things. So I'm about to now share with you 5 areas for you to focus on. 4 of those areas are going to impact your health, but one of them is what controls your health. So of these 5 things, I'm curious, which one do you think is the most important one? Would you agree? It's the one that is going to control your health. So you want to make sure that you're addressing all of them. All right. So now we talked about superheroes. So that superhero analogy, who knows what the greatest stress to Superman is that takes away his powers? Does anybody know what that is? Kryptonite. If you don't know your trivia here, if you're not a fan, kryptonite was the thing that would affect Superman. And how would it affect him? It would stress him. And so that was the one thing that was a stress to Superman. And so I want you to recognize that bad lifestyle choices are what creates stress in our system. It is the kryptonite to our superhero powers that we were born with. And so would everybody agree that stress can affect your health, right? We would all agree with that. And so where do those stresses come from? They come from 3 dimensions: bad diets, sedentary lifestyles, and then just overloading stress, chaos, disorganization, deadlines, just the modern world that we have created, the social stress we're exposed to, like all of those things are the things that we're stressed on. And stress is like kryptonite to your superpowers. And it actually is what's going to tank your immune system, because it's what creates immunocompromise. Stress is what creates immunocompromise. And here's what I mean by that. When we have a stress response, we're going to go into what's known as fight or flight. So basically, we're going to act as though a tiger is in front of us. And so that means that our blood pressure is going to go up, our heart rate's going to go up, our muscle tone is going to get tense, and that's going to go up because we're getting ready to run or fight. Our digestion is going to slow down because that takes a lot of resources. And right now, we don't want to be having lunch. We want to be fighting a tiger. So digestion is going to slow down. Reproduction is going to slow down as well. Not a good time to be making babies if there's a tiger around. Our serotonin levels also go down. It's not a good time to be sleeping, right? We want to be in fight mode. And our sensory system is going to be alert and up and hyper-focused. Fear, anxiety go up because that actually helps us to be ready to fight or flight. Our insulin sensitivity is going to be down-regulated because we actually do want more sugar in our blood because we need to use that sugar instantly to be fighting for the fuel for the muscles. We're going to, so of course our blood sugar will go up with that. We're going to decrease our HDLs and increase our LDLs. So those are going to flip because the LDLs are actually what we use to repair if any wounds happen. We're going to use that for repair. So we want to actually have a higher level of those. And cholesterol is going to go up because it's also used for repair. The other thing that cholesterol is used for is for making the stress hormones that are flooding our body right now. And the clotting factors also are going to go up for that same reason, to be ready for any wound that is about to happen. Our immune response is going to go down. And that's because it is a very expensive system to run, similar to digestion, but even more so. And so the body's going to say, okay, we've got that immune system in the background, but we're not going to fuel it right now because we need all resources ready to fight or run. Now, as soon as that tiger is gone, if there's any wounds, any infections, we're going to be able to turn that stress switch off and turn that healing switch back on. The immune system can fire up again and it can go right to work. So this is an adaptive physiology that pushes us into what's known as a sympathetic state. Sympathetic simply means a stressed physiology. And this is the thing that is going to absolutely give us the highest chance of saving our life if we are actually exposed to a truly life-threatening situation. However, if we are just in stress mode all the time, our immune response actually just stays down. And so this is why stress actually sets you up for being immunocompromised. And so what are the sources of stress? Again, it comes at us in 3 dimensions. It's our thoughts, toxins, and traumas. It's the 3 T's. I mean, would you all agree with me that modern life is unnaturally stressful? And year after year, it's ramping up more and more. We have to be more and more diligent in creating an environment that is less stressful by our choices that we make. And so, of course, you do know that stress can make us sick. And so we saw that some of the most stressed people, for example, during COVID times, right? We look at what studies show us. This study is going to blow your mind. This was a study that was actually done in, I have it right here, it was done in 1999, I think, or 1990s. It was a long time ago when it was done. And I say this, in 1991, it was done. It was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. And what they did is they wanted to measure how psychological stress increased or decreased your susceptibility to the common cold. So what they did, they would never be able to do this study now, because when you hear what they did, it's incredible. They took viruses, a whole bunch of different viruses, rhinoviruses, all different kinds, including coronaviruses, and they actually dripped them right into the noses of the volunteers for this study. People literally volunteered to do this, right? And you can imagine when they did their testing, even though they put the viruses right into their noses, right? Not everyone got sick. And it was interesting that they were measuring the more stress that the person had in their life, the more likely they were to get sick. Now, that's no surprise, but it really was an important factor. And so the best predictor of sickness, more than any other lifestyle factor, even including smoking, alcohol consumption, exercise, diet, quality of sleep, even those factors, the psychological stress was actually the most predictable factor. And they even found that the stats actually showed that, I want to just move this out of the way so you can see it here, up to 25% that did not get sick, even when the virus was stuffed up their nose. 1 in 4 didn't get sick at all, right? So I love this study. I can just imagine, like, Why would they, nowadays, I'd love to see this study repeated, but I don't think they'd get volunteers for it if they were getting a coronavirus dripped up their nose, right? But literally, they'd included coronavirus also as a species. So I want to just talk about, some of the most stressed people in the last few years have been the frontline health workers. And I actually had a program in the heat of COVID. When it first started, I said, okay, we got to just take care of these frontline workers. So I actually had an offer that they could just come in and get free care for a little while. And what they reported was that they noticed that their stress levels came down. One particular frontline worker, her name was Annie, she said she couldn't believe that she was actually able to just go through her day and just be cool and calm and not experience anxiety. That she actually had, even before COVID, she experienced anxiety. Tammy was another nurse, and she had back pain, and she's trying to help all these people, and she had back pain, and it went away, and she was able to just stay on the job. Thank you for these frontline health workers. Another woman, Lori, she had neck pain. She had all these awkward postures she had to be in, trying to be physical distancing, using all the PPE equipment. And she had all this neck strain from it. And so all these folks, we were just able to help so they could just stay on the job. And so really, it wasn't just helping them with back pain and neck pain. It was actually helping to continue to just turn the stress switch off for them. And that helped them to stay strong through this incredibly stressful time. So let's look at what are the things you need to stop doing, what are the things you need to start doing. These are all the things that I was recommending for these folks as well, and how they got their good results. For the mindset, how you think, you want to stop the idea of the limited thinking that we have, the worry, holding grudges. Basically, that study in the New England Journal of Medicine, 394 folks were in that study. And really only 3/4 of them that got sick, and they were the ones that were the most stressed. And what were they stressed about? It was either worrying about the future, which is where our limited thinking comes in. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Or regretting the past, holding grudges. That kind of thinking actually affects your immune system. On the other hand, the things you want to start doing is using that part of your brain, that prefrontal cortex, right? This part of the brain that is in limited thinking, worry, holding grudges, that's the reptilian part of the brain. That's the old part of the brain that's black and white, the amygdala that is always on alert, watching for what do you need to watch out for. That's the lower part of the brain. But we have this amazing prefrontal cortex as humans. We're the only species that has this well-developed prefrontal cortex, and it actually allows us to change our thoughts. In any moment, we actually can choose to change our thoughts. And so instead of using the limited beliefs that just show up kind of uncontrolled from that self-talk that is programmed in from what other people are saying to us, from the news that keeps blasting into us the fears, we actually can just make a choice and choose what do we want to focus on. We can cast a vision of what we want our life to be like. We can cast a vision of what we want our beliefs to be. We can cast a vision of that healthiest lifestyle, seeing yourself in it, seeing yourself exercise, seeing yourself eat right, seeing yourself just turning the stress switch off, right? And literally, it will change the physiology in your body. There's a fantastic book by a guy named Bruce Lipton, cellular biologist, watching what cells do under different environments. And what he saw was that our beliefs actually will affect how a cell functions. And he wrote a book called The Biology of Belief. If you are a note taker, write this one down, The Biology of Belief. And you can get this book. You can actually even get it as an audiobook, which is the way I consume a lot of my books these days. It's fantastic because it's going to totally change your mindset on how powerful and how important it is to actually take control of your thoughts. And so vision casting is a great tool to have. Sometimes people use like affirmations and that kind of thing. So being in alignment with the people around you and the environment around, who are you surrounding yourself with, making sure things are in alignment, making sure that the thoughts that you have are in alignment with what your values are, thinking about what are my values, what is important to me, and how am I spending my day? Am I spending the majority of my energy and my time in alignment with what my values are? Or have I gotten myself into situations that I'm doing things repeatedly that are actually going in the opposite direction of my values? So you want to be living congruently and in alignment with what your values are. And then the studies actually show that living in gratitude is one of the fastest ways to turn the stress switch off. They literally put electrodes on the brains of people in this study, and they showed them these stressful images. And then they asked the people to think about something they're grateful for. And they could see, measuring the chemistry and the electrodes, the frequency in the brain, that as soon as they locked in on something they were grateful for, it was the fastest way to turn the stress switch off. There are many other positive types of thoughts that they could have, but as soon as they went to gratitude, what they were grateful for, that was the fastest way to turn the stress switch off, literally changing the frequency in the brain, literally changing the chemistry in the body in an instant. So it's always good to, in times when you're not stressed, to recognize what you're grateful for, so that when you are stressed, you can remember those things that you actually are grateful for. And there's a, pardon me, there's a great author who's Dr. DeMartini. He's a chiropractor, and he has written a lot of different books, but he has a concept called equilibration. And equilibration means to observe the thing that is stressful to you in the moment and find a way to be grateful for that. Find a way of expressing some kind of gratitude in that very situation. Now, if you can't figure that one out, just have that thing that you're grateful for that's just in another whole category that you can go to. But it's even more powerful if what you are being stressed about, you find what you're grateful for. So that's a hacking tip for you. And there are so many good techniques out there for just changing your mindset. I love EFT, emotional freedom technique, tapping. If you're in my practice right now, you know that I've provided you links to that. And if I haven't done it yet, I'll be doing it in the future with you. So that's the fastest way to know of just turning the stress switch off in 30 seconds as a technique. Okay, here's the next category. What should I stop and start doing? Sleep. Stop doing the practices that are bad for your sleep, which are affecting your immune system. And so stopping screens before bedtime and sleep procrastination. I got to say, I've got scar tissue around this one. This is my Achilles heel. I just love getting into a project. Next thing you know, it's way past the time that I wanted to be asleep, because there actually are very important times when you should sleep. And I'll talk about that, about what you should start doing. But an e-fast, you know, we talked about fasting or eliminating things like when you're fasting, you're not eating. So we want to have good sleep hygiene, just like we wash our hands, having good hygiene around washing hands, you know, that kind of thing, cleanliness. We want to have good sleep hygiene, which means that we want to eliminate the use of screens and computers and smart devices, handheld devices, at least 30 minutes before bed. For some people, 90 minutes. So really start to design your day so that you're going to get the best sleep possible. And that's going to include eliminating the screens. Another thing is just, how do we manage stress? How many people have had the experience of laying down, go to sleep, and it's just think, and these stressful thoughts of either what happened during the day or what's going to happen tomorrow. And if you find yourself caught in that, I have a quick little thing I do before I go to sleep many times if I'm not just dropping right off to sleep. And it's the 4-2-1 tool that I use. So the 4 is, I think of 4 things that I'm grateful for. Think of 4 things that I'm grateful for, one at a time, and just feel the gratitude for each thing, 4 of them. And then I think of 2 things that I just love. 2 things I just love. And sometimes it's just my bed. I just love my bed. I love my pillow, my proper pillow, right? Just 2 things that I love. And then I think of 1 thing that I could use a little help with. And I just offer it up. Could I get some help, please? And then I just let it go. And by the time I do that, oftentimes, even before I get to the last piece, I'm already drifting off to sleep. The 4-2-1 rule. And some people, they try to rely on alcohol as a way. No, just stop that, because alcohol actually interferes with good sleep. It might knock you out, but it actually interferes with good sleep. So please do not rely on alcohol. Stop doing that. There's a great book, again, if you're taking notes, by Matthew Walker, and the book is called Why We Sleep. And so I'm going to recommend that if you don't have good sleep practices, read that book. Because as soon as you read the book, it's going to change your belief about what you think you're getting away with, right? We are the only species that actually procrastinates on sleep. The only species. Every other species, unless they're under threat and running, right, that'll keep them awake. But other than that, they find time to have sleep. It's just a natural thing. So what do we need to start doing for our immune systems as far as sleep goes? You want to shoot for that 8 hours of sleep. You want to shoot for that 8 to 9 hours even. Now, once you're getting older, the studies show that 7.5 you can get away with when you're in your 60s or older, apparently. But I think it's still great to just shoot for that 8, just so that you're in a rested state. And that means 8 hours of actual sleep, right? Not 8 hours of lying there awake in the bed, right? 8 hours of sleep is what you want to be shooting for. And you want to create a sleep sanctuary. So get the screens out of the bedroom, right? Don't do work in the bedroom, right? Have the bedroom be the place where you sleep. And make sure it's dark, really dark, like no little night lights on or that kind of thing, because that actually disturbs your own circadian rhythm and will disturb your melatonin production. So just make it a sleep sanctuary. Actually having it be a little bit cooler will provide better and deeper sleep. So don't have it be too hot in the bedroom. And then even the sleep surface that you're sleeping on. People ask me, what's the best bed to use? I have a preference for the Sleep Number beds. And there are some other ones, the BioPosture beds. So these are ones that you can adapt to your preference. I love those beds. I've been using the Sleep Number bed for a really long time, 30 years, something like that. It's the same bed that I have. I've just replaced a few things in it for like $50 every few years or so. It's just a fantastic product. So I love those Sleep Number beds. But the reason I like them is you can change the firmness. So before the Sleep Number beds, we kind of went with the firm surface is best, because those beds that were too soft would not support the spine. But with the Sleep Number beds, you can actually get it just right. Okay, diet style. Now I use that word, it's not just your diet, it's your diet style, because it's part of the entire lifestyle. It's part of that. The things you want to stop doing: stop putting the toxins in, stop added sugar so bad, and stop starving yourself, meaning having deficiencies. So let's take each one of these. The toxins, those are in the forms of the convenience foods, the foods that are processed, because they're going to have the additives and the preservatives, and there's so much sugar in so many foods. But remember, if you're talking about the immune system, sugar will tank your immune system for 5 to 12 hours. In fact, there was a great study that just showed that 1 glass of orange juice, that's different from eating an orange. Orange juice is where you've taken the fiber out and you're just drinking straight sugar. 1 glass of orange juice actually tanked the immune system for as little as 5 hours, and even maxed out at up to 12 hours. So sugar really does a lot of damage to the immune system. And so you really do want to avoid sugar if you want to get that bulletproofing of your immune system. And when I say starving yourself, what I mean is don't create deficiencies by just eating empty calories. When you're eating the processed foods, they may not only have toxins in them, but they're taking up room that would have been used for the nutrient-dense foods. And so in a sense, when you're eating empty calories, you may be getting obese, but you may actually be starving yourself of the nutrients that you actually do need. So that's different from actually fasting. Fasting can be a very good way to add a healthy approach to your lifestyle. Intermittent fasting, maybe fasting once a week, where you just drink water to give your body a rest, to help it to detox. Also, some people will do a 3-day fast, maybe a few times a year, or maybe even longer than that. And that's another whole topic. But when I say starving yourself, what I mean by that is don't be just eating in a way that you are creating nutritional deficiencies for yourself. All right. And if you're interested in the research around that orange juice, it was in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. It was called the Sanchez study. So pretty powerful information. All right. What do we need to start doing? Hydrating. Every cell in your body, every reaction in your body requires a liquid in order for it to process. It requires water. And so we need to stay hydrated. If you don't stay hydrated, your body has to figure out a way in order to just create more fluid here. And so what it does is it creates more mucus as just a fluid for you to use to keep things moving along. And in order to create mucus, it actually has to increase histamine in the body, which actually then is going to start to interfere with the immune system function. And so we want to make sure we're hydrated. You know, if you have allergies where there's already mucus, the more hydrated you are, the less you're going to have a problem with that. The less hydrated, the more mucus you're going to produce. So hydration, it's so inexpensive, right? And it's just one of the easiest things we can do is stay hydrated. Then having a paleo style of diet is also very important, because paleo refers to 40,000 years ago. It is the diet that we developed our genes, that we set our genes to. And so what does that mean? Let's look at that in a minute. And also we're going to look at supplementation. And this is the way that we can reconcile the toxins and the deficiencies that the modern diet style is offering to us. So what is paleo correct? It's going to be unlimited vegetables, abundant lean and natural meats, some fruits, nuts, and seeds, and limited starch, and no sugar. No sugar. Okay, maybe some raw honey now and then, because our paleo ancestors, if they found honey, that was very prized. But it would not have been something that they would have had a lot of every day. And so if you're not eating in this way, then the chances is you're going to have deficiencies and toxicities. And if you're not supplying the essential nutrients for your immune cells, you are making yourself immunocompromised. Organic is going to be best. Processed, you want less of that, less of the GMOs, more of the nutrients. Remember, the sugar is very toxic and addictive. So you just want to start looking at the paleo correct way as part of an overall lifestyle. Not just one of the components, but as part of the whole lifestyle. How about supplementation? Right? When we look at supplementation, again, that is the way that we can reconcile the fact that we may not be getting the foods that have been grown in the soils that were so rich with micronutrients 40,000 years ago. Even just 200 years ago, our soils are so depleted compared to 200 years ago. I think there was a study that showed that nowadays you would need to eat 50 peaches to get the same amount of nutrition that you would have gotten out of 2 peaches 60 or 70 years ago. And so and why is that? It's because the soils that they're grown in, the farming practices, the fact that they are picked green or, unripe, and they ripen or rot, on their way to you or on the shelf. They have to travel so much distance. So they lose those nutrients the further away from the source. So we can reconcile that by using supplementation. So supplements specifically to support a healthy immune system. These are what the studies are showing us. The vitamin A, the vitamin C, vitamin D. Oh my gosh, the studies are so robust on vitamin D. In fact, actually, there's Nobel Prizes that have been won just looking at the role of vitamin D. And vitamin D got the Nobel Prize not for strong bones, but for infection, fighting infection. The innate immune response is controlled by your vitamin D levels. And the studies actually showed very early on when COVID hit that the people that had the strong vitamin D levels, they actually had the best outcomes. And I'm going to cover that in a minute. And vitamin C, again, is just one of the things that really showed one of the components of the healthy immunological cascade is that requirement of vitamin C, but also vitamin E, also alpha lipoic acid. Those are some of the things that were required in that whole cascade that the immune system needs. And again, fish oil is another one, the magnesium, the selenium, zinc and quercetin. So quercetin is a zinc ionosphere, meaning it helps to get the zinc into the cells. So you want to have the right zinc levels. If you're low, you can consume zinc, but you can also consume it with quercetin because that will help to get it into the cells where it works. Now, not everybody's zinc deficient, and you don't want to go overboard with zinc. So that's why I always want to test people so that we make sure that they have the proper levels of zinc. And if they do need quercetin, we can test that. The probiotics, so that's going to be helping you to have that healthy microbiome. And 80% of our immune system actually lives right in the lining of our gut. So having the prebiotics to feed the probiotics, to feed the microorganisms in our gut is so important. And so we can get a lot of that from our diet if we're eating these foods, the fermented foods that are very probiotic foods, and getting plenty of the food that those probiotic strains need, the prebiotics in our food. But if we have gone off track with that, we can use a probiotic supplement to do that. Fish oil, again, so key for the immune system. Iodine also is very important for the immune system, and many people are actually a little bit iodine deficient. So again, we can test for that. And then to help you have the really healthy, robust, tight junctions in the gut, there's a product called Ion Biome, also known as Ion Gut Repair, Gut Restore, and Gut Support. It used to, the first original name was Restore. So some of you may know it from that, but that's a great, just a great tool to use. So again, supplementation, what do the studies show? They actually show using nutrition to prevent COVID, and the vitamin C, the vitamin D, magnesium, zinc, like all selenium, all of these were the key things that had antiviral properties. The vitamin D, again, the studies were showing early on, May of 2020, we already knew that those in the nursing homes that had high dose vitamin D supplements, they actually had the most significantly lower mortality rates. And again, using the quercetin to improve the zinc uptake, another study showed that. And then the gut microbiome, right? It actually showed that people that were depleting the gut microorganisms, that did not have that robust diversity in their gut microbiome, actually contributed to the severe COVID-19 disease. And the less diverse the microbiome was, the worse the outcomes were with those patients with COVID. All right, how about movement? We want to stop being sedentary. Sitting is the new smoking, as they say. We want to, if we have had macro traumas, meaning falling down, car accidents, sports injuries, slips and falls, we want to stop those macro traumas of harming ourselves, but we also want to stop the micro traumas. So let's take a look at what I mean by these things. Your macro trauma, again, you might have these big ones that can cause injury to your body, but the damage that occurs from a macro trauma, oftentimes we think it's the place that's bleeding or the place that is painful, but a macro trauma can actually jar your spine, and that can have an even bigger impact on your immune system, just from the spine being jarred. Even if it doesn't hurt in that macro trauma, it could jar the spine. And so, of course, there's going to be the obvious stress and damage, but there's going to be some other factors as well. Now, micro traumas, these are things that we're doing all the time that are low-level stresses to our bodies. So that's our bad habits, our poor posture. You'll notice, I'm less concerned in this picture that these folks are less than 6 feet apart. I'm more concerned about their posture as being the thing that is going to be compromising their immune systems. So we definitely want to pay attention to this. It seems like a small thing, but coronavirus is a small thing, and a bullet is a small thing, a deer tick is a small thing. So as they say, don't sweat the small things, but there are some things, small things we really do want to pay attention to. And your posture is a really important piece to this. And in fact, nowadays there's actually a phenomenon called tech stress that is recognized as impacting people's health. And the posture is part of that. So when these micro traumas accumulate, along with the macro traumas, the jarring of the spine, they can all result in something called subluxation, which is a joint misalignment that causes soft tissue damage, that causes inflammation and nerve irritation, which then causes muscle spasms. It fixates the joint, and it actually causes an increase in cortisol in the body, stress hormones in the body. And the reason is this. I'm going to just get a little nerdy with you. We're going to geek out on this a little bit here on the nervous system. So the brain, actually, 90% of the stimulation and nutrition to the brain comes from movement of the joints and movement of the spine. And so each joint has a mechanoreceptor that sends signaling to the brain every time you move it. But when you do that, it helps the brain to get feedback about where the body is in space. And so when it has that signaling of all the different ways that we are moving, it actually is able to then locate exactly where the body is in space. And if the brain is in charge of moving the body around and protecting the body from injury, it needs to know exactly where the body is in space. And so when we fixate a joint, meaning we lock that joint down, we strap it down so it doesn't move. And in the case of subluxation, our smart bodies will do that to try and reduce the irritation to the nerve. But when we strap that joint down, it's called fixating the joint. It means it's not moving. But when it's not moving, the brain no longer is getting the mechanoreceptor signaling from that joint. And so the brain starts to lose track of what's happening there. And when the brain loses track of some area of the body, it goes into a stress response. What is going on down there? I can't find where you are, and I can't adapt properly to the environment if I don't know where you are. And so the body actually will increase the cortisol levels, which are the stress hormones. When we increase cortisol, we start to alter immune function, just as we saw before. And so when we look at this idea of the subluxation, remember that we have this nervous system that is controlling everything, and we have a suit of armor that is protecting that nervous system. So the brain is in charge of running everything. As long as the messages get down through the nervous system, through the spinal cord, and out through the nerves and back again, then we get to be healthy. If we look at a little bit more advanced idea of the nervous system, we have two branches of it, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So every organ and tissue in the body is going to be influenced by each of these, parasympathetic and sympathetic, but it depends on the environment, which will determine which of these parts of the nervous system are engaged. So when we are resting or in a non-stressed mode, digesting, sleeping, the parasympathetic nerves are going to be controlling the organs. But when we're active or stressed, the sympathetic nerves control the organs. And if we're fighting a tiger, we just go sympathetic dominant. And we're in stress mode, fight or flight mode. So remember, I talked about the 5 areas we were going to talk about. 4 of them will impact your health. 1 of them controls your health. The nervous system is controlling every organ in the body, and so it is in charge of controlling your health. And if we look at it more closely from this immune system perspective, we can see that the brain is in charge of running everything, sends the messages down the spinal cord, out through the nerves, to go to things like, the lymph and the lymph nodes in the throat. That's an immune system gland. In our chest, we have the thymus gland that the immune system is going to be controlling. We have our adrenals, which affect our stress levels and cortisol levels. That can affect our immune system. We have our spleen, which is an immune organ where a lot of immune system function moves from. Our bone marrow is where we create our immune system cells, our white blood cells, right? All of these things are controlled by the nervous system. So our immune system is controlled by the nervous system. And the other factor with our immune system is the immune system will engage once a stress is identified. So it's up to the nervous system to determine whether or not there is a stress present. And if there is, the nervous system directs the immune system to then start to engage. It directs the hormonal system, right? So the cortisol levels are going to increase based on the nervous system perceiving the stress and directing the immune system on telling it what to do. So that is how the immune system works, how the nervous system works, and how they work together. And so when you think about health, again, a lot of people, the definition they're using is really, well, how do I feel right now? But when we look at the whole job of the nervous system, the sensory nerves are what feel things like pain, or I don't feel good. That's your sensory nerves that do that. The other 90% of your nervous system is running the muscles and running the organs, but this is the part you can't feel. So it's less than 10% of your nerves that actually feel pain. It's actually about 7% is the real number that feels pain. So we don't want to rely on how we feel to determine whether we're healthy or not, because you can be immunocompromised and feel like you're fine. So we have to use other ways to be measuring what our functional level is. So remember, with that stress response, fight or flight, that is going to affect our immune system function. And remember, stress is the kryptonite. It's the thing that's going to create weakness for us. And so remember, when it comes to movement now, we want to have exertion, burst exertion, panting, sweating. We want to have good ergonomics. We want to get checked for subluxation. So let's look at this and unpack this a little bit. The best practices for movement are not just to be moving your body during the day. Like I'll encounter people that like every day they go on this 5-mile walk. And when they first started to go on that walk, oh, they were sore afterwards. They were breathing hard. But after a while, they were getting really good at it. And now they can just knock out that 5-mile walk. It's easy. They don't even breathe hard. They can do it. And so they think to themselves, I must be really healthy now because I can just do that walk with no problem. The best practice for exercise is to push yourself. To push yourself means to exert yourself. It means that you want to do exercise. You go on that 5-mile walk, you want to do it in a way that you add panting and sweating into it. So, when you come to that hill, you want to walk as fast as you can up that hill so that you have that panting and sweating occurring. Now, okay, if it's the winter time, it's cold out, maybe you don't get to the point where you're sweating, but you want to get to the point where you're panting so that you can't actually carry on a full conversation in short bursts. That is the best practice for exercise. And that means that's going to be for everybody. If you are out of shape, the way to start getting in shape is to push yourself so that you're panting. Now, that might not take much at all, but you're on the right track when you do that. If you're a top athlete, if you still want to be getting the benefits of exercise, you want to be adding exertion into it. All right, so I want you to just understand that importance of panting. If you're swimming, you're not going to feel the sweat, but you want to be swimming so that you're panting. So panting and sweating is the criteria we use, but you don't always notice the sweating, but you always want to make sure you notice the panting. And now ergonomics, how you're moving your body. You want to make sure you're moving your body in a healthy way. So if you're doing things at work that are manual, maybe your work actually has you panting during it, but make sure that you have good ergonomics, that you're taking care of your spine when you're doing things, and that you're not going to be injuring your body because of poor ergonomics. That includes everything from something that is involving an exercise, but it also includes when you're sedentary, you want to have good ergonomics so that you have good posture. And then you want to make sure that you get checked for subluxations, because one of the most tricky things about subluxations is that you don't feel them. They're kind of like a cavity. You might have a cavity, you don't feel it. If you wait until you're feeling it, oh boy, you've already hit the nerve, you're already in trouble. So you want to get your spine checked for subluxations, because those subluxations could be interfering with your body's ability to have a robust immune response, both from the driving the cortisol levels, which impairs immune system function, as well as interfering with the nerve supply to all of those immune organs. What do the studies tell us? The impact of fitness versus fatness in COVID-19 totally showed that there was a much lower risk of hospitalization in the people that were fit, right? 17% lower risk of hospitalization for the folks that actually had regular physical activity. So it really was, I love this phrase, it was the tale of two pandemics, right? That pandemic came through, and the people that were fit, they had a very different experience of COVID than the people that were out of shape. They had a much worse experience. All right, so now I want to just give you oh yeah, there's one other piece in this study that was so good. So again, healthy living, having that goal of protecting individuals from risk and chronic disease and viral infections, it needs to include teaching them how to be exercising at the right capacity so that they're getting the benefits from that. So here is an exercise. If you don't already know this, I want to teach it to you. It's called the life extension exercises. And so it's just putting your body through these letters. The shape of the Y is your hands right up straight over your head, stretching up high. This is for getting great posture. The W is putting your elbows down into your back pockets. And then the L is when you're having your elbows come into your side with your hands out to the side, and you want your hands extended outward enough so that you can't see your fingers wiggling when you gaze out at the horizon. And then the T is the same thing, where you're opening your chest, squeezing your scapula together so that you can't see the fingertips wiggling. And so if you do that 20 seconds in each position, so a few breaths in each position, and do one round every 2 hours when you're sitting, and at the very least, you want to do it twice a day. So if you want your teeth to last you a long time, you want to extend the life of your teeth, you brush them twice a day. If you want to extend the life of your spine and your body, you might as well do these life extension exercises twice a day. I just do them when I brush my teeth. Make sure I get it in. All right, now I want to share with you the curious example of Masha and Dasha. I don't know if you've ever heard the story of Masha and Dasha. Masha and Dasha were Siamese twins, and they were in Russia, and this was many, many years ago. And when they were born, they actually thought this was a pretty interesting situation. And so they observed Masha and Dasha throughout their entire life. They watched them as they grew, and they watched everything about them. And what was interesting about them is, although they shared a linking of their body, they were Siamese twins, co-joined, they had many things that they shared. They shared a bloodstream. So their circulatory system was a shared system. Many of their organs that were shared organs. And what was interesting is that one of them, Dasha, was a little bit more bent over to the side than Masha was. And they had different experiences of health throughout their lives. In fact, Masha was a bit more robust. I mean, she would even smoke cigarettes now and then, right? But she was more robust. And Dasha was the one that would get sick more often. And so it was very curious that at one point in time, Dasha got the measles. Now, when you think of the measles, you think of it as a measles virus that gets into your body, and it's found in your bloodstream. It's circulating around your bloodstream. So anytime that they put anything into their bodies, whether they breathed it in or they ate it, it actually was circulating. Once it got into the bloodstream, it was a shared circulatory system. So the measles virus was in both of their bodies, but only one of them actually got the disease of measles. It's mind-blowing, because we think that measles is caused by the virus, but how could it be if it was actually in the same circulatory system? It was in both of their bodies at the same time, but only one of them actually had the disease. There must be some other factor. So what was the difference between the two of them? They had their own central nervous systems. They had their own brains and spines. So the central nervous systems were not shared, but a lot of the other things were shared. And Dasha was the one that was more bent over to the side, so she had a bit more compromise on her spine than Masha did. It's mind-blowing, isn't it, that the spinal column could actually have more an impact on your experience of even infections in your immune system than we ever thought before. So what's my experience in my practice? Well, I want to give you the example of this woman, Elaine. She actually was in my practice. She came in because she had headaches and neck pain, but she also suffered from not just headaches and neck pain, chronic sinus infections, allergies, asthma, and eczema. So you can see she had both kinds of immune system challenge. She had the autoimmunity of the asthma and the eczema and the allergies, and she had the hypoimmune system where she was getting these chronic sinus infections. Each year that she was under care, she started care in March of 2016. Each year, we just introduced healthier lifestyle changes. And so it was progress, not perfection. So she didn't have to change everything at once, but she just started to get healthier and healthier. She got her spine adjusted regularly. She followed our recommendations. And by 2018, she actually suddenly had this unexpected bout of idiopathic, means they don't know where it came from, thrombocytopenic purpura. And that was scary that when that happened, but it actually normalized within a few months, and then it remained stable. And her doctors couldn't quite understand how it actually just normalized on its own and then just became stable. So she had a great outcome with that when that just showed up. And of course, we adjusted her. Of course, we might have changed some of the supplementation that we used for her as she had to go through this, but it stabilized. And then in 2019, she literally said her sinuses were the clearest they had ever been. All right, so little did we know what was coming down the pike here, but she even said that she had the best pollen season ever. She was able to do yard work and her housework with plenty of stamina. She couldn't believe she had gone through the spring season in 2019 and was just cruising along, the best ever. And then in February of 2020, she actually made the statement that her breathing was the best it had ever been. And what happens in March of 2020, right? So we took 4 years to get her to the place where she was the strongest. This is exactly what I wish everybody had been doing, right? And then that badass virus comes to town and she is ready for it. And so if we look at it over the past, it's been, coming up on 4 years now. What if everybody, the minute that badass virus came to town, everybody just started to work on building health, building their immune system, getting their superpowers cranked up? 4 years later, our whole country would be incredibly healthy. We could have used it as an opportunity, right? But instead, the message just kept being all about the strength of the virus, the strength of the next variant, the strength of the next variant. And people didn't make the changes that they needed to make, and the outcomes we are seeing. So I've had seniors during the entire sick season, as we call it, right? The flu season, all of that. I've had seniors just cruise right through it. As far as the last 4 years go, I've had seniors just cruise right through it, not even have any colds, no flus. Even when traveling a lot, they just did great with it. And no more allergies either. So we've already heard that story. And that's because they were bulletproofing their immune system. So that comes back to, again, just how would you know if you had a subluxation? So if you're listening to this and you're not under care and you don't know whether or not you have subluxations, then I would like to invite you to come in and get checked. And what do we do when we check you? We use palpation, feeling the spine, feeling the motion in the spine. Again, if you have a subluxation, it's where the joints get locked up and fixated. So if you lose that motion, that's a good chance that's where there's a subluxation. Even just the static palpation of the feeling the misalignment of that vertebrae. We examine the posture. So we do a visual analysis and we can look at the posture. And that's a good reflection on what kind of ergonomics people have and so on, what their bad habits have been. We can use X-ray to look at the positioning of the vertebrae, but also to identify how long the problem has been there, how long have the subluxations been there, because the degenerative change will start to show up when you have uncorrected subluxations over time. And then we use our instrumentation to look at the nervous system. So remember, we talked about 90% of the nervous system you can't feel. And so how would we know if it was healthy or not? We actually can measure it. And so thermal scans are one of the ways that we measure the nerve supply to the organs and to the blood vessels and the glands in the body. And so a healthy normal scan is going to look something like this, but a scan of somebody that's subluxated might look like this. And we know exactly what the map of the nervous system is. So right in through this area. This is nerve supply to the spleen. Okay, that's one of the immune organs. Nerve supply to the liver, which can affect our digestion. Remember, our gut is 90%, 80% of our immune system lives in our gut. The T10 area is the nerve supply to the small intestines. And then this is the nerve supply to the bowels. Again, so important for our gut. So this is an example of somebody that had a scan and did show the subluxations. And then over time, we always remeasure it so that we can monitor and make sure that those subluxations are clearing. So if you're curious and want to know whether or not you have subluxations, I would like to invite you to feel free to just send us a text and let us know you're interested. If you send us a text to our website, which is our phone number, which is 802-985-9850. Write that down, and then you can send us a text. And even if you just put the word bulletproof in there, then we'll know what you're talking about, and we'll get you set up so that we can go through the discovery process with you, so we can be very thorough with understanding what are all the things that have accumulated over time that have landed you where you are right now. We can get clear on what your goals are, what concerns you have, and then we can really see, do you have subluxations that could be interfering with that? Are there ways that we can coach you on the lifestyle so that you can get that robust immune system that you may want for you and for your kids and for your family? So remember, we talked about there were 3 things that are causing the healthcare crisis that we have: personal responsibility and our definitions of health, misunderstanding health. Here's the 3rd one: procrastination. Procrastination is the thief of health, right? And it's one of the most important things that we can actually conquer, because people oftentimes, they do have good intentions. Oh, well, I'll take care of my health next year. Oh, New Year's resolutions. Okay, here we are in February. Most people, they've already stopped and lost and given up on their resolutions. Okay, I'll take care of my health in a few months. So maybe when the spring comes, I'll start to exercise, right? Maybe on Monday, I'll do that. Procrastination is killing people. People that are just not getting things in order that they need to be, right? Cancer doesn't wait. Diabetes doesn't wait. Viruses don't wait. Subluxations don't wait. And so the bad boys don't wait. Procrastination, it's the thief of health. We have to just take action. We have to overcome the inertia, and we have to just take action. So for some of you, you're already doing a lot of good things. I just want you to keep doing those things. And if you feel like your immune system is strong and robust, well, just keep doing the things that you really need to be doing. For some of you, there's some changes you need to make. And maybe you're doing a lot of good things, but look at how can you level yourself up and just take it to the next level. Because our culture, I promise you, is pushing us in the wrong direction. So we have to actually be active. We have to be engaged. We have to be proactive in moving ourselves in the right direction by making those healthy lifestyle choices all day long. It's the 10,000 choices we make every day that are going to create that cumulative effect. And we want it to be moving in the right direction, right? So again, just procrastination is the thief of health. So how do you know how healthy your immune system is? How do you know how healthy your nervous system is? You have to measure it. And so I do want to encourage you to there we go. I thought I had it on a slide here. So just send us a text, Bulletproof, to our office, 802-985-9850, and we'll connect with you and we'll get you right into my schedule. And I'm going to leave you with this last thought here. There was a family, and they had this wonderful tradition that every time they had a birthday, they would put the number of years that they were turning. That was the number of candles they had on the cake. But not only that, that was the number of wishes that they had. And so in the family, they would get excited when their birthday was coming. They'd just start to make their list of all the wishes that they would have. And one year, the dad, he turned 40 years old. And so he had 40 wishes that he had. It was so fun. And then the next year, he turned 41. But he only had one wish that year because he had gotten cancer. And his one wish was to get his health back. That was his only wish. So my goal for you is to have you and your family have as many wishes as possible because you're enjoying that robust level of health. Do what it takes to get there. It may be hard, but it's worth it. And if you have any questions or challenges, please reach out to me. I'm so happy to help in every way that I can. So I'm going to stop our program here and just leave you with that thought that I want you to really just take the action steps, because it's always going to be worth it. Just do what it takes.